Welcome, and I want to talk to you as therapists. I'm going to assume you know a number of things that we're going to cover here today. I want to kind of give you a backdrop of why we do the trauma egg. Now, the trauma egg has been around for a long time. It started with Marilyn Murray. You're probably sure you know that. Then Patrick Carnes took it and used it. He developed it and created some stuff. Then Dr. Mark Laser and I did it in the 90s as we began to add that to our workshops and began to unfold. And for me, then it's over the years, it's kind of continued to unfold. And I wanted to kind of talk to you about that because some of the newer material on shame that's out there from various authors like Brene Brown is that I think that it's really important that we don't give up this tool, that we work with the tool. And those who go through the workshops, either Bethesda workshops or Faithful and True Ministries, both do the egg. And that's a tremendous tool for therapists out there to say, okay, this is something we need to use. And we spend, I know at Bethesda workshops and probably at Faithful and True Ministries, they spend a huge hunk of their time going through and working on this trauma egg. And for the very reason it's an incredible tool for you, actually, as you work through with your clients some of the work. So I'm going to quickly go through this. Not that I'm going to spend a lot of time on the other background stuff because you know all this, but some of the things that we go through the clients, we work with the clients, and then they build this egg and they bring them home. And I think the desire has been over the years is that this is really a tool for you as you work through this with a client. I'm just going to show you some ideas. There are a lot of ways of doing this with your clients. I think some of the therapists at the workshops, we all kind of do it a little bit different. And I'm just going to show you my way, and it's not necessarily the right way, or it's just a way. And so you look at it, you can tweak it and do whatever you want with it. I have specific outcomes that I want, so that's why I do it. Basically, I go through the rules of the family and I have the client kind of identify what those are. I kind of just cover that real briefly with them. Then I talk about what roles they play out. Now, initially on this egg, I want to know their roles. You might want to go on further with them and find out what roles the other siblings and go into family structure work. That's fine. You could even do, a family mogul. You can do that if you want. Bottom line, I'm wanting them to do what they have, and then we'll go back and look at the other later. Then I talk about the rules. Now, this is right out of Pat Carnes' work here, is that, the boundaries. So this is invasive abuse. It's because of loose boundaries, and what are those? I cover that with them. And obviously, we're just skimming the surface, so we encourage them to kind of add things that they can think of to them, invasive abuse. And then we go through the wounds of abandonment and because of rigid boundaries. We talk about boundaries, and then we give them a list of those things. Obviously, we're once again just skimming the surface. I recommend you go back to Pat Carnes' work or to Dr. Mark Laser's work around what those are as far as abusive types of abuses there. But usually the clients will know. I mean, they kind of will know in their gut. If they can get into this, then they're going to know, and they'll put things on their eggs that they'll later do it. Now, if they skip certain things, now they will. They seem like invariably they'll leave things out of their egg. My take on is that client is not ready to deal with it. So if they're not ready to deal with it, it doesn't show up on their egg, and that's okay. Later, as they build trust with you and there's a comfort and they begin the healing process, then they're going to say, whoa, man, I didn't even remember this. It's pretty big. I don't know why I didn't put it in my egg. Well, they weren't ready. And I let that roll. I just say, well, when you're ready, we'll deal with it. It's that kind of thing. And so I don't want them to get into shame about their shame egg. So bottom line. Now, then what I do is I get them to say, here are the rules of the family, so they're putting up there. So when they get through these workshops, generally they're going to have something similar to this that they're going to bring to you. Now, not all of them are as creative as this person was. However, there's some in there, they just have a few. I've had clients where their egg is scattered from to and from. I mean, they've got stuff from childhood here, adulthood here. I mean, it is all over the place. I just try to flow with them. And if you can remember when they're telling you the egg and they're going through it with you, realize there's probably a very ADD. There may be some learning disabilities in there too. And you're probably looking at me trying to do an egg where I'm all over the place. Just flow with them. It gives you information. It helps you to understand what their brain may be like as they look at their life. Some of them may leave out a whole lot. We've had clients that come in with just a few things in their life, and they're in their 50s. And it's like, there's a whole lot of stuff that they're trying to do. So what they'll do is they'll do several of these here, and they'll put a whole lot of their story into that one symbol. What I've done is I've let them tell their story that way. I've not stopped it. Then I've gone back and I've asked them, would you take this one right here and build an egg around it? And what happens is they eventually come in with an egg that's similar to this. It just takes them a while. Sometimes they need a little help unpacking their history and their trauma because they've so compartmentalized their life. Now, then they go through what roles do they play out, what rules, roles, and then down here, I ask for descriptive adjectives of the father, 1 or 2 words. If they have a stepfather, a grandfather, an older sibling that was a father role, then they put those in there. I ask for certain things like religious background, our educational background, what was their career or jobs that they did. I want to know kind of socioeconomic background so that I can know what were some of the messages that may be in here that's impacting them today. And then the same with mother, 1 or 2 word descriptive adjectives to them. And then as I begin, they tell their story. Once they go through the outline, then I have them start at the beginning, and generally I will just let them tell their story the first time. Normally, they go right on through there pretty well. I'm not worried about if they get blocked. I may make myself a note here and there that I want to go back and undig something out, but I'll let them, because most of the time when they're telling their story like this, it may be the first time they've ever told their entire story ever. And so letting them have a first run at it, I just kind of let them go. Now, what I do when I get through with this is that I will stand with them up at the board with just facing it. So this is on a flip chart or on a board somewhere and on a wall or something, so we can both stand up and look at this thing as they tell. Now, several reasons. I'm ADD and I like to move around, but second of all, I want to stand with my client while they're telling their story. There may be times where they just need to sense that they're not having to face this alone. So as they're standing there looking at the egg, I'm standing there with them and I go through this. Now, the next step and what this is all about is that I want to understand what are the messages. I want to know that when they get into shame and they shrink or they become suddenly spontaneously childified, from like Sandy Brown's terminology, is that when they're here as an adult and some event happened that created shame in their life, how far down did they go? How young are they? What do they feel? What are the messages in that experience? And then I begin to say, okay, oftentimes it's easier to take something in a more current event and ask them, what was the message there? And sometimes I have to prompt them and work with them to say, what did that say about you? Well, I am a failure. Okay. And what emotion did I go with it? And then I begin to say, where do you carry that emotion? So I'm trying to concretize the emotions, the message, and the experience all together. Then say, how old do you feel? Generally, by the time we get through, they see a clear path where they have repeated their trauma and the shame message over and over and over in their life, all the way back to some earlier age. And they can generally put this together fairly easy. I have to work with them sometimes, coach them along, but I say, what about here? Or they can go ahead and take a ball and run with it. Now, this is just one color. I might choose another color with another message, and I'll work it back another way. And you might see it go down through here, and they said they're working with 2 different messages. One is, I am a failure. The other one is that I might be unsafe, or that I am broken, or no one will love me for who I am, or whatever it is. And you can follow and trace those all the way down. Now, once they begin to see this, then you can say, okay, now here's the pattern of trauma work that we need to do. And so I ask them, I says, what are the messages? Now, I put the negative messages, oftentimes they'll come back from the workshops and they'll be here at the top. It doesn't matter where you put them. I will generally then pause and stop them there and say, why don't we just check in with your higher power and ask your higher power what they think of you. Now, sometimes they just pop, pop, pop. It's pretty amazing. Sometimes they're not real sure how to deal with that. It says, what might your higher power say about you if you were to hear them say something? So, you might have to step them back a bit and ask them this stuff. Now, what I'm working for here is that, bottom line, this is your negative shame messages, or if you do EMDR work, this is your negative cognitions. And if you're doing positive cognitions, then that would be, what does your higher power say? And I usually put those on the outside of the egg, a different color. And so I put in here, says, okay, put those over here. Now I've got a tool to work with as I begin to work with through some of these trauma events as they go through their life, and I go through and work with the negative cognitions, the positive cognitions, and if I need to do resource installation through that, then I can. Now, that's for those of you who do EMDR. There's those of you out there that do brain spotting, they do other kinds of trauma work or experiential. Bottom line, this is a tremendous tool that you can use for them. And what I found is that as they begin to, I work with the earlier memories first. That's just my style. You don't have to do that necessarily. But what I've seen is that they begin to, in their recovery, regress less earlier in their life. In other words, they don't go down as far in their egg. They make better choices. And they begin to identify and notice that what's really happening is I'm in shame. Because bottom line, my belief is this. They're somewhere in their egg believing that there's something before a visual trigger comes into an addict's mind or a co-addict's mind. And I believe that this is the earlier triggers, and if we can train our clients to identify shame messages, and when they come on them, and when they suddenly feel this wash of shame come over them, then more than likely you can get them way before the visual trigger or some other kind of stimulus happens to trigger them. They can realize they're already in their egg. They've already been triggered. And I believe, in my belief, this is where I work with a lot of clients around their shame. And bottom line, I've seen some real progress. Anyway, I hope this has been really helpful. I welcome any questions you might have. Just email me and ask me. Thank you.